let's get into the castle law.
The castle law.
What is the castle law?
You don't have to be a victim in your own home. You have the right to defend yourself and the lives of others. If you decide to pull the trigger, that is what you're going to be measured against. We just had an incident over on the Las Vegas Boulevard.
We did a couple weeks ago.
And he ended up dying. I'm just going to blast away when somebody comes in. Now the question is am I in imminent jeopardy right now? Your home is your castle. And you don't have to retreat from your home. So what if somebody's breaking in my house? And do I get to shoot them?
Right, and you should be prepared to do that. Okay, we're back with MJ, Michael Johnson. He's our resident law enforcement security expert. By now, you've already seen his resume either online on our website or through previous conversations. And let me just say, that we need some kind of disclaimer that, things we're talking about are very serious things. And obviously, we're just talking about them. We're not giving you advice on legal issues or...
You really should talk to a professional.
Right.
You need to work with a professional, talk to an attorney.
Right.
We're not giving legal advice here.
Right.
We're not telling you can or cannot do certain things.
Right.
But this is just based on experience and what we see in the industry. And but we encourage you to educate yourself.
Right.
And to make sure that you are following the local laws and your state level laws and of course all federal laws.
So let's get into the castle law.
The castle law.
What is the castle law?
There's really two laws out there. There's a stand your ground law, and then here in Nevada we have something called the castle law. And it's not unique to just Nevada, but Nevada has codified it to some extent there, and it allows us to understand what we can do for self-defense within our own home. The castle law basically says here in Nevada that your home is your castle, and you don't have to retreat from your home in the case of an intruder. But I don't know how many times I hear people say, I'm just gonna blast away when somebody comes in. Listen, one of the most important things people out there in our audience need to understand is that the minute you decide to use deadly force, there are parameters around that. There are legal things that you need to understand. Was it reasonable? The term reasonable. And that gets measured based on what a reasonable person would do in the same or similar circumstances as you. And it can be a difficult thing to decide what's reasonable. I mean, we just had that big trial with the fellow that was choked to death on the train
in New York.
And was his use of force reasonable, not reasonable? I'm not here to debate that. But at the time, at the moment, he felt it was necessary and reasonable. Now, would a jury of his peers feel the same way? Obviously, there's differences of opinion there. But that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about is reasonable force. And if you decide to pull the trigger, that is what you're going to be measured against. And within the castle law, there's also a concept of being in fear for your safety, right? If you are fearing for your life or the safety of another, those are also measurable and are important when you're talking about defending your home. Some guys out there banging on your window or trying to take the screen off, you can't just walk up to the window and start blasting away. Because you have options. In deadly force, there's things that we talk about. One is, does the bad guy have the ability to hurt you? Now, you and I are in close proximity, and you have martial arts. So do you have the ability to hurt me at this point? Yeah, we're in close proximity. Do you have the opportunity to hurt me? Yeah, because you're, again, right here. Now, the question is am I in imminent jeopardy right now? Is my life currently at this moment in jeopardy? And the answer is no, because you're not doing anything threatening.
No reason to believe.
So would I be justified if I just pulled a gun and shot you? No, not at all. So those are the things that they look at. And then, of course, the last one is preclusion, which is your retreat. Did you take any opportunity to try to retreat? And that gets really complicated when you start to talk about the difference between a castle law or a stand your ground laws.
Yeah.
Because some states here in the US have a requirement that you have to retreat at all costs before using deadly force. And then you have the vast majority of states that adhere to the stand your ground.
Yeah.
And stand your ground doesn't mean that you have to run.
Right.
It means that you do have to have that reasonable fear and were your actions reasonable?
Yeah.
Another concept in that is proportionality. Is it proportionate?
Yeah.
All right. So again, if I am a 6'5", 275 pound man, and I pummel a 105 pound female because she's attacking me, was it proportionate?
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of things in there that you have to unpack when you're starting to talk about these laws.
Yeah, I think what the law is trying to do is capture what we would all call good judgment. If a mouse breaks into my home, the mouse really isn't a threat. Are they in my home? Yes, they are. It's a mouse. Do I need to like blast it out of the house? Or is there a way that, you know, we can solve the mouse problem? And I'm using mouse as a metaphor, right? So what if someone has the wrong address? What if someone, you know, maybe someone's been drinking and they try to undo my door and they come in and they had some mistaken home.
Yeah, you just read my mind because I was going to tell you a very brief story about that.
Yeah.
You know, here in Vegas, people have a tendency to drink. And when they get to drinking, they also forget where they live. I don't know how many calls for service I had when I was in law enforcement or how many we receive where somebody's out there trying the door handle to get in. And what they don't realize is that they're not at their own home. Yeah. They're standing in somebody else's home. Yeah. So now they go around because they can't get in the front door. And now they're going to climb in through a window. Now, just imagine how bad you would feel if you were blasting away just at that first thought that somebody was coming in your home. Right. And that's not the intent of the castle law. Yeah. And the intent of the castle law is to inform you and allow you to understand that you don't have to be a victim in your own home. Mm-hmm. You have the right to defend yourself and the lives of others. Mm-hmm. And it's very important that people understand it's not about property, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can't just blast you because you're stealing my TV. You know, we're not here to defend
Can't shoot
property.
him in the back.
Yeah, it's not it's not something that you can just do and then say later I feared for my life because he's stealing my TV. It's very important that you understand the legalities. And again, I'm going to go back. I always hate to say this over and over again, but people really do need to consult with an attorney. Right. They need to understand. They need to know the law. Read it for yourself. Understand the law. Yeah. We're not giving you that specific advice. I think the two most important questions I get at every homeowners association meeting I go to is, what if somebody's breaking in my house and do I get to shoot them? Yeah. And the other one is, what kind of gun should I have? Yeah. You know, and those are the two biggest questions I get. Interesting. You know, and everybody wants to know because everyone is confused. Yeah, they want to be safe, but they just don't know the answer to the question. Yeah. And so it's very important that we talk about that. Provocation. You know, somebody breaks in, like you said. Right. You know, they're stumbling around your house. Yeah. They're intoxicated. They think they're in their home. Right. The provocation isn't there. There's no threat to you. Yeah. Now you might be afraid because obviously somebody's in your home that you don't know. Yeah. But you also have to take into account what their actions are. Yeah. Do they have an identifiable weapon in their hand? Mm. Are they being aggressive or not aggressive? All of those things come into play that will then substantiate your imminent jeopardy or your fear for your safety. Yeah. You know, in an earlier segment, we talked about just having the physical ability to seek safety or to defend yourself. But I can also imagine, you know, people in Las Vegas, you said drink. The person who's entering your home is drunk, has the wrong home, but you've also been drinking. And now you don't have clear judgment of what's actually happening here, right? Yep. You can see where a pretty innocent situation goes south pretty quickly. Right? It really does. Yeah. And again, those are all those ultimate responsibilities you have when you have a firearm and when you make a choice. Yeah. Now, when we talk about the castle law, you know, everybody's always thinking in terms of their home. Yeah. What about your car?
Right.
Okay.
Road rage.
Road rage. We just had an incident over on the Las Vegas Boulevard.
We did a couple weeks ago. And ended up dying.
And he ended up dying. So again, what was the course of conduct that led to all of these things? And did he have the right to shoot from his car? Again, I don't know all the facts and circumstances, but again, you are to be safe in your own vehicle.
Right.
And so if you are under attack and in fear for your life, then you will have to justify. And was it reasonable to use that force? But just understand that these laws, these stand your ground and castle laws, they extend beyond the home to the places that you have a legal right to be. In many cases, your workplace or your car. But you have to have a legal right to be in that location.
Yeah, I try to make this as simple as possible for, say, my kids, right? The 12-year-old. And the bottom line is, look, if someone's trying to hurt you or take you somewhere, you absolutely have the right to hurt them back, right? And you should be prepared to do that. Not everyone wants to hurt anyone, right? And that's a good human trait, right? But if someone's kidnapping you, they're not going to take you to Disneyland, right? The thing I really am emphatic about with my 12-year-old is, look, someone's trying to hurt you, you got to be willing to hurt them. And that brings up the level of damage. Let's say that someone is stumbling around my home, and let's say I do have the castle, and let's say I do have my weapon within reach. I don't really need to pop them a couple times in the head, right? I can shoot a few rounds as just like again, we're not giving legal advice, but a friend of mine had someone try to break into their home.
I love your scenarios. This guy's impossible with a scenario.
A friend of mine, they're trying to break into his home. It's at night. And instead of, he had all the skill and all the training and all the practice to double tap them right there in front of their home, but he decided just to put a few rounds in the ground, right? And by putting a few rounds in the ground, they fled, right?
Well, putting a few rounds in the ground and putting a few rounds somewhere else in their body is a little bit different.
Right.
Again, going back to training, the purpose is to defend yourself.
Right.
We are not shooting to kill people. We're shooting to stop the action. Right. We are trying to prevent. And under stress, everyone always talks about shooting center mass. That would be the torso.
Main body.
And that's because under stress, you're probably going to have a hard time hitting your target.
Anything,
and especially if you're not as practiced and polished as you should be. But going back to your scenario where you're talking about popping them, if you're thinking in those terms, you're already on the wrong footing. Okay, you're here to defend yourself. If he's across the room, and he's not attacking you, you're not in a justifiable use of force situation. So I don't want anybody to get confused in the concepts here, because again, it does get very legal, it does get very technical, and the minute you pull a trigger, you're going to be under the most scrutiny that you've ever been in your life.
So this is a really important point. So what you're saying is, look, if you're playing games by putting rounds in the ground, were you really being threatened to begin with?
So, there's not really a warning shot out there.
Interesting.
Again, there's laws about firing a firearm in a city.
You definitely don't want
at or near an occupied structure or where people congregate.
Because
so there's laws. There's laws around pulling that trigger.
Because those rounds will go through walls and into the neighboring home. I mean, I think people would be surprised how far that round is going to go. And you see on TV people like popping rounds into the sky.
Bad
it doesn't
business.
go into orbit.
It comes back down, and where it lands.
As fast as it left the muzzle, right? In general, the physics is as fast as it came out.
And just remember that you are the gatekeeper. The minute you pull the trigger, you are releasing a round that you are responsible for. To summarize that is to say that there are laws in every state in America that govern whether you can stand your ground or, as in Nevada, you have a castle law. Just remember, it's all about what is reasonable, what is proportionate, and always remember that your life or the life of someone else has to be in jeopardy, meaning that you are in imminent danger for you to make that decision. So don't take that responsibility lightly, because it is a very, very critical and important decision that you're going to make. And we want to make sure that you're making it with a clear mind and with a clear purpose and intention.